Okay, so today we are finally going to finish off the book of Daniel. I was hoping to do this a while ago. Daniel, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Daniel, so in the grand scheme of things, I guess I should not be surprised that it took me this long to get through Daniel. Because it's a fairly short book, but there is a lot to talk about when it comes to Daniel. We're going to read Daniel chapters 9 through 12 today, and this is going to be two separate incidents, two separate passages. Daniel 9 is, like the other 8 chapters of Daniel so far have been, a complete unit by itself. Now it fits within the broader context of the book of Daniel, but it is a unit. It's an encounter Daniel had, an incident he had that is by itself, isolated in time. It fits together with the rest of the book, but it is by itself. 10 through 12, the last 2 chapters of Daniel, are all one long incident, one long passage. Now, the reason why I mention this, again, is to help us understand the structure and context of the book of Daniel. And I've said this before, but I want to mention it again because it's something we always have to keep in mind. Always have to keep this in mind. These Old Testament prophet books were arranged very carefully by the prophets. Whether it was the prophets themselves, and I think generally speaking it probably was, or maybe their scribes. In some cases they may have had a scribe who worked with them to help arrange the books. We know that, for example, Jeremiah had a scribe that worked with him to write down some of his material. I am waving the white flag on the cats, okay? They're out here, they're going to bother me, it's just going to happen. I'm waving the white flag, I've been defeated, the cats have defeated me. I can't keep them contained any longer, they're going to be out here, they're going to bother me, they're going to get in the way, and they're just going to do that. I have to accept that I have lost this battle. Anyway, and the prophets arrange their materials very carefully. You know what I'm saying? When it came to, okay, Kat, I see you there. What do you want? All right. When it came to, it's just annoying. When it came to writing their, again, every prophet spoke first and wrote. Most prophets didn't write at all. Okay. The majority of the prophets of Israel's history. I'm going to go ahead. This is a big weather day. There's a lot of. I'm speaking this on December 22nd, 2022. About actually more like 1/2 noon. And today's a major weather day in my area. There's a big, not really a big snowstorm, but a big winter storm with snow and bad falling temperatures and bad wind chills coming in. And I've been kind of monitoring that on the weather today, and I even had the TV on still just now, looking over there. There's the TV. I had the TV on just now, even looking over there to keep track of the weather, but it was too distracting, so I'm turning that off. Anyway, these prophets arrange their books very carefully and very thoughtfully, very. What happened? Oh, okay. Hang on a second. Very carefully structured and composed and put together. Oh, yeah, okay, whatever. And they always spoke first. All the prophets spoke first. Most of the prophets only ever spoke. Elijah only spoke. Now, Elijah wrote a letter. We have a copy of a letter that Elijah wrote. And it's possible that Elijah wrote some materials that ended up getting incorporated into the history books of the kings that we have. It's possible. Some of the history books that we have of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles, well, Samuel and Kings in particular, are not named, like the authors do not identify themselves, and the authors clearly are getting their information from other sources that were available to them. And so it's possible that the prophets may have been responsible for some of those sources that end up getting incorporated in history books. It's possible. We don't know for certain. We won't know that until we get there and ask them. But all the prophets spoke first, and even the ones that ended up writing down later on only did so after they spoke. Now, Daniel was not a typical prophet in that he did not speak the word of God to the people during his lifetime, at least not that we have any record of. There is not a single example anywhere in the book of Daniel ministering as a prophet in the same way that any other prophet of God did. Now, he is a prophet. He himself calls Daniel a prophet, so we can confidently count him among the prophets, but he did not have a typical prophetic ministry. But he did write his material down. I believe he wrote it down for the Jews who were returning from exile near the end of Daniel's life. And he carefully selected the material that he wanted to include in it and presented it to them. I believe gave it to them as they were going back. So Daniel 9 is a part of that. Okay, it's separate. It's an incident that occurred. We read at the beginning of Daniel 9, the first year of Darius. Okay, he's going to have an incident that occurs here, which is separate from the other incidents that happened in his life, and yet it is connected. And so the entire book of Daniel is a unit. There's 10 separate stories in the book of Daniel, with chapters 10 through 12 being one long story. But they all form, they're all incidents that occur in his life, and they form a unit. They form a pattern. Daniel will, as you've already seen in Daniel 2 and 7, and even the further elaboration in Daniel 8 about part of that, Daniel will help interpret itself. Okay? And we're going to see more of that here as we go forward. So we should look at each story, each unit, as its own separate unit, but we should also see it as all units and make up a whole. And this is how the prophets wrote, okay? Isaiah did this. We saw Isaiah compose his book in these chunks, or these sections. Every few chapters, as we have numbered the chapters, was like a section, or a chunk. And I said how like each of these chunks, like Isaiah 1 through 6, or Isaiah 7 through 12, or Isaiah 13 to 27, again, as we have them numbered, and going all the way to look, each of these chunks of material is like its own little picture, its own little painting. And then you put them all together, and there's like one big picture, one big painting that Isaiah is producing for us. And Jeremiah was like a kaleidoscope, where he took the same set of images and the same thoughts and concepts he wanted to communicate, and kept spinning them around in a circle, like in a cylinder, over and over, so that it was like the spokes of a bicycle wheel. They just kind of kept rotating around. And we would say something, then we'd say something else, we'd say something else, and we'd go back to that first something, and then that second, and we just kind of kept doing that over and over and over again. Ezekiel kind of wrote his book almost like it's an ongoing diary. Like an account of the visions he got from God as he got them, and the stuff that he was told to do by God to demonstrate to the people the messages that he wanted to communicate with them. And Daniel's book is a retroactive, comprehensive look at his life and the visions he had or interpreted for other people, and some of the incidents that occur in his life or in the lives of his friends, that he, I think, compiled together near the very end of his life after he had all of them, and gave it to his people as they were going back in the land, so they would have it for posterity. Because he's told, as we go through these last few chapters, he's going to be told by the angels, I think even by Christ himself, to seal up the vision, which basically means to finish it, to roll it up in a scroll, because that's what they did back then. As they wrote on scrolls, roll up the scroll and seal it, and preserve it. That's what that means. So he is being told explicitly to preserve this vision for the future, when the events that are talked about in these visions will start to unfold. Okay, and during this time, this is now the difficult part of Daniel. Okay, we have passed the easy part. Okay, Daniel is a fairly short book, and there are parts of it that are pretty easy. Parts of it, in fact, that are very easy, very self-explanatory, and there are parts of it that are not. And we have passed the easy parts of Daniel, and we are now in the difficult parts. There is widespread controversy about these last 4 chapters of Daniel. And you're highly unlikely to find very many theologians, or whatever, how you want to talk about it, who'd agree with each other on what these last 4 chapters mean. Okay, there's some very contentious points. There's some passages here in chapter 9 and chapter 11 and 12 that are very contentious, and there is not universal agreement on them. I am not in a position where I can tell you that I had the final word on the matter. Okay, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to try to pretend that. Okay, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to position myself as is someone who has read the Bible and who has studied Daniel many times over the course of 20 plus years now, And this is where I am with my thinking on these matters. I have studied under many schools of thought. I have gone back and forth in my views on it, okay? I think different things now about it than I did in the past. And this is where I am on the matter, okay? That's what I can tell you. And I'm going to make my case the best way I know how, and present you with the information the best I have, to the best of my understanding as it is right now. And that's what I am, that's what I can do, that's what I can offer. I cannot offer you the final word on the matter. I cannot offer you the definitive statement on the matter. Okay, that was not a good idea. Alright, so, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start a new video. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this. It's going to be in the way for a little while. Those are my study notes. We'll get to that when we get to Daniel 11. So for now, we're going to get to Daniel 9, and I'll go ahead and start a new video, and we'll read through Daniel 9. Most of Daniel 9 will be pretty easy, because most of it is just Daniel praying. All right. There's going to be about 4 or so verses near the end of Daniel 9 that are going to be tough. But Daniel 9, I think, is 27, 28, 27 verses long. And the hard verses are basically the last 3 or 4 verses. Most of the book, Daniel chapter 9, is pretty straightforward. In fact, I was even thinking, last time I was here, and I did Daniel 7 and 8, I was even thinking of reading through most of Daniel chapter 9 and stopping, like, at the end, but I decided that was not a good idea. So, we're going to get to Daniel 9 here in a moment.